20 minutes unveiling the 11 biggest historical cover-ups. The history you know is most likely fake. 10th place. The CIA's Core Consciousness Control Project. During the peak of the Cold War, a classified reshaping experiment, codenamed MK, quietly unfolded. High-level officials poured in millions of dollars in secret, dedicated funds, extending their tentacles into more than 80 universities and psychiatric institutions. Across the US and Canada, hundreds of ordinary people became living lab rats, stripped of all dignity. In the notorious Operation Midnight Climax, they used baits from a specialized industry to lure unlucky men into traps inside hidden safe houses, dosing them with large amounts of potent hallucinogenic agents, completely without their knowledge. Researchers in white coats hid behind one-way glass, coldly watching every single detail of the total collapse of human will. Professor Cameron, dubbed the incarnation of the devil, invented an extremely brutal memory-washing technique. He wildly claimed that the human brain could be completely formatted like a magnetic tape. Those innocent patients had to endure continuous, violent electric shocks, up to 75 times the normal medical safety limit every day. The current instantly pierced through the scalp, causing the patients to suffer bone fractures and full-body convulsions on their iron beds. They would also use banned drugs to plunge patients into deep comas lasting for weeks, and endlessly loop mechanical recordings into their ears using high-power players. In a surviving, real medical file, an innocent woman in an absolutely dark, secret room was forced to listen a full 250,000 times to the sentence, "Your mother hates you." When these poor souls opened their eyes again, their past had turned into a terrifying blank space. Many even forgot the faces of their parents and their own names. What was brought back home was merely a thoughtless, walking corpse. In 1973, due to leaks regarding the investigation, the agency burned thousands of boxes of core, top-secret files overnight. Those blood-stained ringleaders completely escaped accountability by relying on behind-the-scenes protection. To this day, rumors still persist that this consciousness control project continues to operate under a different codename. 9th place. The fabricated phantom time hypothesis. Have you ever thought that the year we live in right now does not correspond to real time at all? In Europe's long historical narrative, there is a cultural fault line of several centuries known as the Dark Ages. If you compare the European literature of that time with that of the major Eastern power of the same period, you will find that the East had official records precise to the exact date for every monarch's daily life, and even solar eclipses. Yet, strangely, the wars and successions of kings in Europe back then were like a completely muddled account. The phantom time hypothesis theory proposes a shocking conclusion. Human civilization's history was fabricated and stuffed with nearly 300 years of fictional time. The medieval history between 614 AD and 911 AD does not exist at all. The mastermind directors behind it were Emperor Otto III and the Pope. They quietly modified the official calendar on parchment paper, turning the clock forward by 3 full centuries, skipping directly to the highly religiously symbolic era of 1000 AD. Scholars supporting this theory have listed numerous physical loopholes. In those 300 years, almost no archaeological physical evidence exists. Even the astronomical data recorded by Europe at that time, when calculated backward using modern astrophysical formulas, reveals a severe disconnect between the actual stellar orbits and literature. If this hypothesis is ultimately proven true, it means all of us from the day we were born have been living in a deliberately fabricated illusion of time. 8th place. The evaporation of civilization at the Library of Alexandria. The ancient world once possessed an unparalleled lighthouse of wisdom. At its peak, the Library of Alexandria housed over 500,000 volumes of out-of-print manuscripts, covering almost all of early humanity's top scientific discoveries, philosophical speculations, and true history. From the raging fires triggered by Julius Caesar, a siege in 48 BC, to the street riots sparked by extremist ideologies around 391 AD. More than half of the master geometrician Archimedes' lifelong works on mechanics and dynamics were completely lost during this period. The mega-deep sea earthquake of 365 AD triggered a monstrous tsunami. Churning waves leveled the bustling port within a single day, dragging the remaining ruins of the library completely into the freezing depths of the Mediterranean Sea. When the management of power shifts toward an absolute closed loop, the theocratic authorities began to view science as heresy that could destabilize their rule. They deliberately allowed these precious manuscripts to be burned in the flames of war, and even subjected Hypatia, the female mathematician who privately studied ancient Greek texts, to extremely brutal torture on the streets. Because a population stripped of independent thinking and stripped of its civilizational memory is the easiest type of submissive sheep to keep penned up. In the long run, 7th place. The missing years of a sacred core figure. In the long, sacred records of the world's core religious figure, there lies a massive historical black hole that drives countless archaeologists and theologians mad. From a high-spirited 12-year-old boy to the day he suddenly appeared in the crowd at the age of 30 to preach his grand philosophy, there is absolutely no official record of where he was or what he did during those 18 years of youth based on fragments of ancient scrolls deeply buried in old temples. Some firmly believe that in his youth, he followed Eastern caravans along the Silk Road all the way to the east, studying ancient Eastern philosophy and meditation deep within mysterious India. Some secret old documents even record a far more unbelievable legend, claiming that when he encountered that famous catastrophe, he used a bait and switch to have his younger brother executed in his place, while he fled all the way to a distant island nation in the Far East, where he married, had children, lived a peaceful life, and passed away at the age of 106 on that remote hillside. An ancient gravesite said to belong to him is still preserved to this day, attracting countless curious tourists every year to pay their respects. The early management seemed to have deliberately deleted all folk literature that did not align with the unified narrative, solely to craft a flawless, absolute image of faith for the general public. 6th place, the Nazca geoglyphs that can only be viewed from high above, on that red desert land in southern Peru, scorched by the blazing sun for thousands of years. It is carved with massive geoglyphs, whose full scope can only be seen standing thousands of meters up in the sky. Straight lines spanning several kilometers crisscross the wilderness, interspersed with lifelike, giant patterns of spiders, hummingbirds, and monkeys, which have lain quietly in the scorching sun and blowing sand for over 2,000 years without any damage. Western scholars in the 1920s were convinced that this was a giant astronomical calendar written on the Earth. But computer, big data, simulation technology ruthlessly overturned this flawless assumption because the vast majority of the lines could not generate any mathematical equivalence with the constellations in the sky. New cutting-edge theories lean more toward this being a rain-making ritual critical to the tribe's survival. The spiders carved on the earth signify that thunderstorms are about to arrive. The dancing of the hummingbirds represents the fertility of the land, and those immensely wide geometric lines were ritual pathways, stamped out by thousands of believers during worship. Before these precious ruins were officially protected by modern laws, a large number of ancient burials had already suffered devastating, frenzied looting. Countless top-secret artifacts that might have recorded the true meaning of the lines had long drifted through the black market into the hands of unknown private Western collectors. 5th place, the Golden Ark of the Covenant that bizarrely vanished into thin air. In humanity's countless adventure, legends, and mythological epics, frequent mention is made of a mysterious wooden chest covered in pure gold. He is said to be the sole medium for ancient tribes to communicate directly with the supreme existence during the brutal wars of thousands of years BC. Every time this sacred object was carried onto the battlefield, it could trigger a cataclysmic, devastating blow. However, after the Babylonian army captured Jerusalem in 587 BC, this supreme holy relic bizarrely vanished from the face of the earth. Some firmly believe that at the final moment before catastrophe struck, a prophet hid it secretly inside a bottomless cave deep in the Judean desert. To this day, countless illegal speculators still conduct excavations on those dangerous cliffs. Others believe it lies deeply buried within that intricate, giant underground labyrinth of the Temple Mount. Unfortunately, that land now carries too many complex entanglements of international political interests. Any form of deep archaeological excavation has been categorized as an absolute forbidden zone. Some even speculate that, during the Crusades, it was secretly shipped back to Europe by the mysterious Knights Templar, or even secretly transported into the depths of the ice sheet of Antarctica during the chaos of World War II, in a remote corner of the Horn of Africa, inside an isolated ancient church. The monks there look into the camera and firmly claim that they have guarded the true Golden Ark of the Covenant with their lives for generations. But except for that lone keeper of the Ark, who cannot leave the altar for life, no one can personally verify the truth or falsehood of these words. 4th place, Göbekli Tepe and the enigma of the ancient handbags. Deep in that desolate plain of Turkey, archaeologists dug up a super temple beneath the mud that completely shatters the baseline of human understanding. According to the most advanced scientific dating methods, its construction date predates the Egyptian pyramids by around 10,000 years, over 11,600 years ago, when humans, according to textbook conventions, were still in a nomadic stage of stone tool gathering. They inexplicably carved and erected dozens of giant stone pillars, weighing up to tens of tons in the wilderness. The emergence of this temple completely shatters the traditional ironclad rule of mainstream academia that agricultural settlement must precede complex civilization. An even more interesting global coincidence follows. Among several ancient sites around the world that are separated by tens of thousands of miles and have never intersected in history, a bizarre, identical pattern surprisingly appears with high frequency. A strange carving of an ancient ancestor holding a mysterious handbag. Whether it is the Sumerian civilization of Mesopotamia, or the Olmec tribes, or even the Mary stone carvings on Pacific Islands, this pattern appears. In that core region, there was once an ancient king list. It recorded monarchs ruling for tens of thousands of years, which bizarrely vanished from a museum during the war in 2003. The ultra-long lifespans and the paradise of immortality recorded on it directly clashed violently with our current biological common sense. 3. Tietz Place. Vitrified relics of prehistoric nuclear war. In those ancient Indian epics and scriptures passed down for years, they surprisingly describe, in extremely vivid and hair-raising words, ultimate weapons of unimaginable power. Those ancient verses state crystal clearly that it was a kind of power capable of emitting a light brighter than 1,000 suns, a terrifying force that could completely reduce massive armies and war elephants within a radius of several miles to ashes in an instant. A few days after the catastrophe, those who luckily survived would begin to lose their hair frantically. Their nails would drop off, and their skin would ulcerate over large areas. Does this not sound exactly like the severe radiation symptoms following a modern nuclear weapon explosion? In the ancient city, ruins of Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, dating back to more than 2,500 BC, people discovered massive areas of stone buildings, completely vitrified and crystallized by terrifyingly high temperatures, and scattered on the desolate streets were ancient human skeletons, tested to have severely elevated radioactivity levels. In the coastal or boundary regions of certain continents, modern instruments can still detect large areas of anomalous radiation zones to this day. The data there highly match the traces left behind after modern human nuclear testing. Some radical plasma physicists have even claimed, after analyzing the specific elemental arrangement on the surface of Mars, that red planet also suffered a devastating blow from an interstellar nuclear war in the extremely distant past. Yet, these anomalous data, which are enough to completely upend current scientific worldviews, have been deliberately sidelined and selectively ignored by mainstream academia. Because once the existence of prehistoric nuclear wars and advanced prehistoric civilizations is acknowledged, the long theory of evolution would completely collapse in an instant. Second place. The Mayan codices consumed by fire. That group of ancient Mayans who were masters of astronomy once recorded cosmic laws as vast as smoke, using extremely complex hieroglyphs on specially made bark paper. They did not need any modern astronomical telescopes at all to accurately calculate the orbital periods of Mercury and Venus, and could even perfectly predict solar and lunar eclipses happening on a specific day, thousands of years later. However, when those greedy Western conquerors stepped onto this fertile land, a fanatical military chaplain, upon seeing these books filled with symbols, unexpectedly gave a cold order for destruction. He had people pile all the thousands of Mayan codices in the square and throw them into a roaring fire. The sole reason was that these books did not conform to their religious beliefs and belonged to evil heresies. That sin-filled fire raged for days and nights, ultimately leaving only a pitiful 4 codices surviving the chaos. Perhaps what that fire burned was not some heretical doctrine at all, but rather some forbidden knowledge left over from a previous civilizational epoch. To completely establish their absolute dominance in culture, the winners did not hesitate to use violent means to turn a once great civilization into unlettered barbarian savages, with no written records in history textbooks. First place, the ruthlessly downplayed African Aksumite Empire. In the distant ancient world, that was a powerful realm, prosperous entirely beyond modern imagination. Relying on their superior geographical location, they monopolized the entire gold and spice trade of the Red Sea, possessing their own independent minting system and a massive military, and even constructed what were the largest single stone stelae in the world at the time. Their massive caravans could not only cross oceans to reach ancient Eastern empires, but in terms of international status, they could even stand on equal footing with the top royal houses of Europe. However, in later modern history books, this great civilization that once stood shoulder to shoulder with Rome and Persia was deliberately compressed and vilified by later scholars into an insignificant, primitive, and backward tribe. Those Western scholars who later seized the discourse power of world culture, united to suppress and downplay the core role this continent played in world history. There are even widely circulated, earth-shattering rumors claiming that the reason they wanted to wipe this empire completely out of human memory was to cover up an even more unsettling ultimate secret, because that lost golden ark of the Covenant, which has appeared in countless myths and possesses divine power, the location where it truly vanished during its final appearance in the world, happens to be deep within the core heartland of this very empire. Among all the worldview-shattering, mysterious historical events reviewed today, which one do you personally think is the ultimate trump card that the managers behind the scenes are most afraid of us knowing? Post your boldest guess directly on the screen below. Let us together use the truth to rip away the final veil of hypocrisy from this world.